this video I want to talk about my paper cut images I created in Photoshop inspired by Pablo Tequadro, and I hope I pronounce it right. So first I created a new background with a solid white color, and you don't see the image which inspired me now, but you'll see it later. The first thing I did is to create a selection. I changed the color fill as a background. I created a selection for his body. For that I selected the white color of the background and inverted the selection, what you will see in a second. And I did all that so I can create kind of an outline of his body and delete the rest. How I did it is at selection, and I minimized my selection for 40 pixels, so you will only have a border then around his body, which was not enough for what I wanted to do. And I duplicated the layer so I can get more outlines of his hair and his face. For that I made another selection, and you'll see it now again. I clicked on contract, and contracted the selection for 30. I've said 40 before, but it's actually 30 pixels. And now you see that I did a second selection I just talked about. Now I have all the kind of outlines of his body I wanted, but I didn't want everything to be outlined, so with a layer mask I brought the parts of his body back which I wanted still to be included in my final image. And I only wanted to see half of his face and kind of the part of his neck you see there. So I did all that with the layer mask. Once I finished that, there's a really important part for the paper cutout. It's the shadow. So you go to the layer style, go to drop shadow, and create a shadow in the way you want it. I decided to do 40 pixels, and later on I decided to have an opacity of 90, which you will see at the end of my video. Here you can see how it looks with and without the drop shadow. I didn't want a shadow around his shoulders and on his head, so I deleted that and made some corrections on the shirt because I didn't like the part of the skin you see down there. So I removed this and did some basic corrections of the photo itself, played with the brightness. And then now it's actually the first time you will see the image which inspired me. It's on this website, which I can't pronounce, but you see it there. That's the image I tried to recreate, and you already see on the left side that he also created this kind of outline. But he did it all in, with a knife and prints, and I just try to recreate the same thing in Photoshop, because you can play easily with the sizes of your images, and if you do it with prints, you have to print it over and over again. So what you saw in the image too is that he had some hands in his face and arms. So I choose, here you see it again. So I choose a second picture and try to get a nice selection of the hands. I expanded the selection for 5 pixels so that I have a nice border, because when you cut paper you also don't have it exactly. You see there some black outlines, which I thought is really nice, and then I drag and dropped it to my image I'm working on, and I didn't really like it, so I chose another picture to use the hands and the arms, and I placed it right under his eye, like in the picture of Pablo Tequador. And then I removed the arm on one side, so I have again this nice outline. And then I did some corrections on the arms, because I expanded my selection for 5 pixels earlier, and yeah, that's a little bit of work. It takes some time here and there to get finally what you want to, but the nice thing about this paper cut look is that you don't have to do it exactly, because as I already said, with a knife you also wouldn't do it exactly. Here in the image you can see again how he worked around the eye, and on the left side with the border. And you can also see on the left side where the face is ripped off that you have all these nice white areas and structured areas, and then in contrast the really black parts of the image. So it's a bit difficult to figure out what you want to do next when you work on a project like this. And there I recognized that I didn't like the color, so I removed the color but didn't merge the layers together, so I can still work with them. And after that, without the color, I liked it way more. Yeah, and then I worked on the settings and to get a nice contrast between his face and the arm, and did some corrections here and there. And this video shows only parts of my editing process, so the most important parts, because yeah, you know, it would be too long for a video otherwise. So here I show that you have a repetition of the hands and the structure in his skin in this picture. And then I had to think, oh, now I recognize that I would like to have this paper cut, and for that I actually ripped the paper, scanned it, and worked with it in Photoshop. So I placed the paper cut behind his face and worked along the paper cut. For this next part of the image, I worked with another paper cut. It's actually from the same paper cut image I scanned, but this time I wanted to clip the picture to the paper cut border. So you place the paper cut layer under the picture and clip them together. So his face, it has this border of the ripped paper. That's why you get through the clipping. you see it without. Oh, I copied the layer then and clipped it again so I have the shape, and then I used the layer underneath, which is the same paper cut, and I moved it a little bit to the top so we don't have only the shape of the cut, but it also looks a little bit like a cut, as you see here. After that, I decided that I want more of his hair structure in the picture, but I didn't want it all the way up, so we still have that nice effect of the border. And I did the same. I copied the paper layer, I clipped it, and I moved it a little bit to the top to get this nice edge. Then I added some more paper down there in this gray area, and I also decided to take another picture and add some more of his hair, just to still have some white areas in the part underneath the ribbed structures. And then the most important part comes at the end. I scanned the paper structure of a brown packaging paper in grayscale. That's my top layer, and I use the blend mode, multiply, go down with the opacity and with the brightness, so I have the paper structure all over the whole image, which connects all the different parts I just added. I added some more light brightness so that the structure is not too heavy. And since it was really gray, I went back to RGB mode and added a little bit of red and a little bit of blue. So I thought the color looks nicer then. As you can see here, it's RGB color and don't merge, so you can still work on your layers. Go to red, add a little bit of red and add a little bit of blue. And yeah, that's the final image, and I really like what I came up with, and I think I would do it again, and I'm glad I tried it, because the only thing I saw for paper cut was people doing Christmas cards on YouTube. So I thought that's a nice thing to experience. But I would definitely also try like Pablo Tequador. I'm pronouncing his name wrong all the time. Like he did it, as you see it here again, with nice and just ripping pictures apart. It sounds also like a lot of fun. One last thing I have to mention is that I noticed after editing this video that I did a mistake in his head and right under his left arm, where you can see two areas which I still have to work on. So it's a really long process, and I hope the video helped someone who also wants to do it sometime.